The field is set for the Sweet 16 now that we've gone through the first two rounds. Unfortunately, TCU not going to be taking part in Sweet 16 this year. We check in with Locked On Horned Frogs. Steven, that was a tough one to watch, especially when you're going up against Gonzaga, who just has that pedigree. They go to the Sweet 16 every year. But the matchup on paper looks like that TCU might have a shot at this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the glaring mismatch for TCU was Drew Timme, who is sort of like the Van Wilder of college basketball, and he was great tonight with his mustache and his mortgage and his ARP card. He was just taking him to task. But I mean, in all seriousness, he was fantastic. I had 28 points, and TCU really threw multiple defenders at him and just didn't have much of an answer. But they shot the ball pretty well in the first half, and I think Mike Miles especially showed up in a big way. And when Gonzaga really started to trap him and force the ball out of his hands, unfortunately, TCU just didn't have much of an answer. Guys like Chuck O'Bannon, Emmanuel Miller, Damian Ball had rough nights shooting the basketball. And I also just think they didn't really find ways to get Mike good looks late in the game. But, tough loss for them. And, you know, this is the second straight year they bowed out in the round of 32. So this is the new mountain they have to climb, is finding a way to make it to the second weekend of the tournament.
Why do you feel like this is such a tough hump for them? I mean, obviously the first round getting that win, but then to kind of just not quite have it when you get to this round.
Well, I mean, you're playing good teams. Obviously, last year they played a 1 seed in Arizona, and down the stretch just couldn't make plays. And I think again tonight when Gonzaga went on that 13-0 run to take an 8-point lead, they just didn't have much of an answer. So, you know, you got big-time roster turnover coming up next season. Mike Miles is moving on. I think Damian Ball will probably be gone as well, a few other players. So I think they'll be active in the portal. But, you need to work on getting a higher seed too. I mean, if you're an 8 or a 6, then you're playing good teams in the second round of the tournament. And so it's a tough ask to get a victory there. But I thought this was a winnable game for TCU, and they had their opportunities. They just couldn't find a way. 12 of 20 from the free throw line. You know, some of the little things that you just have to do to keep it Mansing in March. They weren't able to get it done tonight.
When you look forward to the program where you're adding, obviously things are a lot different now with the transfer portal. You're trying to build that culture a little bit with new players. What do you want to see them kind of adding in terms of, obviously they're losing some players, but what would you like to see them have in additions for next season?
I mean, scorers and shooters mainly. I know that sounds really simple, but this was a team that just didn't have a lot of guys that could stretch the floor and hit outside shots, and they made up for it with their athleticism and their ability to get up and down the floor. I think with their defense as well, even though they struggled against a high-powered Gonzaga team tonight. So it's going to be. I feel like they'll be active in the portal. I mean, they really have to. They got 2 kids coming in for the 2023 class, but they're losing 4 or 5 players from this team, depending on kind of what happens with declaring, for pro eligibility. So I expect them to, try to get some players in here to take the torch, and hopefully some guys like Jacoby Coles and Micah Peavy step up in a big way next season. But kind of a rebuilding year for them next season on paper, and we'll see if Jamie Dixon can continue what seems to be a nice foundation that he's set here in the first 7 years of his tenure.
A tough one against Gonzaga, and tough way to go out in the second round. Steven, I'm sure you'll have a full recap on Locked On Horned Frogs. Of course, Locked On College Basketball has you covered for all of your tournament needs, and it's all here on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.